Hello and welcome to another episode of On the Floor with Wayne and Rob. I'm Wayne Highlander, Director of Sales for Bona Adhesives.
I'm Rob Johnson from the Bona Training.
What do you say, Rob?
How are you, bud?
None of your business.
There we go. Oh, there we go. Right away. Good. That's it. Don't take any time now. All right.
Okay. Do you remember your first day on the job doing floors, Rob?
It's funny you say that because I played buddy. I played golf with a buddy of mine this weekend who worked with my dad's crew. He's a buddy of mine. He worked on the summer crew, and he was just reminiscing about his first day on the job, which I thought was pretty funny. And that I can't believe that we talked about maybe doing a show about this, especially after I talked to him last week. So, yeah, I do remember, and especially when I was talking to him, definitely brought back some scary memories.
Okay, first of all, how old were you?
Okay, the first day when I was really getting paid, that really join the crew, not just cameo appearances as a kid.
Yeah,
was 1976. So
okay.
I was 14.
Okay, 14 years old. Well, wait a minute. 14 years old. I mean, but it was still a summer job, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you were working right under your dad?
It was a full-time summer job. It wasn't, it was, we were traveling. I was traveling with the crew.
Hey,
I'm on the road.
I'm not judging you.
It sounds like you are. How old were you?
Well, first of all, were you working like directly for your dad, or what was the arrangement?
Well, it's the family business. We were doing the bowling alleys.
Okay. Were you nervous? Probably not, because it was your family, right?
No, I was petrified.
Were you really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I was 14, and I think the youngest guy in the crew was in his 20s.
You were still figuring out life at 14 years old, weren't you, Rob?
No, I didn't even begin to start thinking about figuring out life at 14.
No kidding.
I like this interview. I like the way this interview is going. Am I supposed to be asking you these questions back?
No. But why were you nervous? I mean, you would think of your family business, everything, and
I was not nervous. Buddy? Nervous has absolutely not. I was petrified. I think there's a difference between nervous and petrified.
Why were you so scared or petrified?
Because I thought I was going to mess something up.
I'll be darned. No kidding.
I thought that, I was going to definitely screw something up. I mean, the other, like I said, making cameo appearances and stuff with the family, or, working at my grandfather's bowling alley, that was just, clean up and stuff like that. This was the show. Yeah. For me, I know this sounds so goofy, but for me, I'm in the show. I've heard about this all my life, the crew, and now I'm official. I'm getting paid. I'm getting a check. I'm getting expense money, and the last thing I want to do is screw something up. So
yeah. And how'd you do?
It really wasn't what I thought it was going to be.
Really?
Yeah. Because, making appearances, everybody was just operating really cool equipment and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think I touched a piece of equipment for my first year.
It was all hand sanding and
I had no idea all the prep and all the.
Yeah.
I'll tell I know you're gonna love this one. Yeah, I love making fun. I couldn't, like I said, when I was just showing up on a job when they were all working, all the machines and you saw the pieces of equipment that we used to use, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was all set up and going. I never thought about how they get it out of the truck, put it all together,
Yeah.
take it apart, put it back. The carny life, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing.
Yep. Yep.
And the first day, I'll never forget the first day of like unloading and them teaching me how to carry stuff and everything.
Mm-hmm.
How incredibly heavy everything was.
Wow.
Just, I thought I was tough,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I threw the shot put in high school. I was lifting weights.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing could prepare me for the weight of all the equipment and carrying it up and down stairs and in and out of the truck. And I mean, that part really, so the whole thing was crazy.
So it's something about when, like, I had a lot of jobs growing up, all kinds of different jobs, but I was going to school and I knew that there's temporary part-time jobs. There's something about when you get your first full-time job that, like, this is it now. This is your life now. This is what you do every day now. That is shocking. You know what I mean? Like, all right, well, I go where I work for 8 hours. It was dark when I got up, and I got home and it's dark, and then I'm going to eat, and then we're going to go do this, next, and then this is life now, I guess. This is what you do. And it's something very jarring about that and shocking when you're a young kid and you get your first real job. So,
yeah, I mean, and because it was so seasonal back when I first started, you literally were up at 6:30 and you were done with breakfast by 7:30 because we'd go to a diner or whatever. And I mean, you were on the job at 7:30,
mm-hmm.
and the old man, they didn't stop working till 9:30 or 10 o'clock.
Wow.
So you ate at 7:30, right? Or you were done by 7:30. But his thing was, don't give guys lunch at 12 because we got a long way to go from 12.
It's like,
so that was another thing. As a kid, you're like, hey, it's noontime, it's time for lunch.
Yeah.
Well, it's like 2 o'clock before he would stop for lunch. And I just remember like that first couple of weeks, like I'm gonna die.
Yeah. Start shaking. You're starving so much.
Right.
Well, like they say, we're going to only work half a day today. Well,
yeah,
that's 12 hours.
It was a culture shock. That's what it was.
Yeah. For me, like, I was working with my uncle, and I didn't really know him. I didn't grow up with him, and was never around him. I only knew him for like maybe a month or two before I went to work for him. So while he was an uncle, I still was like, I didn't know him. You know what I mean? And I didn't want to let him down. I was nervous about not being good enough to, you know what I mean? And it was all, when everything's new to you, and you're racking out the floor and everything, and he's so fast and you're so slow, and you're like, you're putting the bundle in your own way, and you're making 10 different movements to his two, like a chicken with a head cut off. So that was stressing to me. Like, this is an old guy, and here I am, way younger than him, and especially when he had me do something on my own. Like, we're working together for a while, but then he said, "Go do that room," and how little I did compared to what he did. I was like, "Oh my God, I mean, how am I going to get this fast?" And he must think I'm a loser, man, because I only got this much done. So that I put that pressure on myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah. So you started also thinking about what you didn't know back then. When you're very green and you just don't know nothing about the floor business, and there's so much to learn, and you look back and all these things that you learn, all these things, steps along the way, then you start to become more comfortable and more comfortable as you go along. And you know, you one thing about um, there's no age limit on learning. You know, you're always learning. You're learning new stuff and new techniques and new stuff. And I always wonder when, when do you stop learning, the trade? When do you say, all right, I've learned enough or whatever? I think it is always continual. It's always something new to learn. And I think we learned a lot back then. When you're a kid, you learn it pretty fast because you have to learn it, and you're young, and you realize I got to do something for a living. I got to learn something. You know what I mean? So, and there's pressure on you, and you learn, and so it comes naturally. I wonder as you get older, um, is it harder to learn, or what? Why? You know what I mean? I mean, do you slow down in learning or whatever? Because I think I think it's I think they say as you get older, your capacity to learn, I think, is a little bit less. But I really think that's offset by your desire to learn new things. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I don't know. That's the kind of way I looked at it. I think that the researchers say like there's a time when you plateau and then you start to trail off.
Hmm.
I've noticed it you in the last few years. Um,
Have you?
yeah.
Yeah. You're getting really deep there, huh?
No, I don't. Don't you
What
think?
are we? 5 minutes into the show,
Yeah.
you're really pontificating today, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. I just wonder. Um, it's so much easier to learn when you learn when you don't know anything, and it gets tougher. I think as we've been doing it for a long time to like social media and stuff like that. Like, do you think it's harder to learn as you're older because you know what I mean? It's just like it's another thing to learn and what have you. And I think you put roadblocks in front of you, like, oh, I'm at this certain age now, and do I really even need to learn this? And what's the point? Instead of embracing it, you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. Yep, absolutely. I had
That's
a
good.
class. I had a class.
Have you
So I
have you?
know you're waiting for me to say something, and then
Yeah,
as soon as I start to say something, you interrupt me.
because I'm not confident if you are going to say anything. I was going to ask you if you've learned anything new lately.
Yes, I have something very exciting I've learned that you're not going to believe this. You're sitting down, right?
I am,
All Fruit Loops are the same flavor.
even though
They're just different colors.
really. Well,
Yeah, you see?
congratulations on that. So yeah, I never gave up on you.
I tell you, there's. Uh, I didn't know what I was going to talk about at this birthday party in Boston, and now there we go. Okay, I've
Beautiful.
got the icebreaker for this
There
thing.
you go. There you go. Yeah, I would lead with it. You know the people? A lot of them?
Oh yeah, all
Okay.
family and friends,
Hmm.
definitely.
Be better if you didn't know him. He just led with that.
um, we had this week one of the I don't know how to put this because it wasn't bad, and all the guys in this class were really you know how you've done classes, you've been in classes and stuff like that. You know how there's always that one guy. You know what I mean? There's always that one guy who's going to really, kind of
Hmm.
question you,
Yeah. Hmm.
This class was half of the class
Was that guy?
was that guy. Oh yeah. Half of the class was that guy. But it was a blast because they all knew that they were that guy, but kind of embraced it type of a thing.
Hmm.
So, uh, I mean, it was like at the end of the class, me and the other Bona guys were like, "Whoo, oh, wow, we
Hmm.
just got to take a exhale here." And it was Larry, the guy, Larry Nicholson, the TM, who's Mid Atlantic, and he was just like, "Man, have you ever seen anything this intense?" I go, "No, man, this is something." Because the great part is, when you get guys like that, and then you show them, and you bring them into the camp, and they now because one of the guys, he started the class off with, when I going around doing the introductions and everything, and how many years he's been doing. He's been doing it for 38 years. And he goes, I'm not even sure why I'm here. Doubt I'm going to learn a damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he was with his son, and, they were just, it was a joke,
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then once, like by day 3, he's whipping down notes and looking at his son. Did you remember that? Did you get the,
I'll be darned.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. He goes, I thought it was crazy he had 5 sealers. Now I see why okay. All right. So yeah, I don't think you going to these classes and everything. No, I don't think you're ever too young to stop learning.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Okay. You all right?
I got nothing.
You got nothing at all, huh? What about your first day in the job? I mean, do you remember actually what you
I
did?
said
Do you
that.
remember what you
did? You just hear what I said? I said I was with my uncle.
Yeah, but
I didn't really.
Didn't really sound like you. Like I can tell you specifically what I was doing.
Oh, I know what we were
Like
doing.
I know everybody. Oh, you run the edger on the first day. I didn't get to touch an edger for months.
Yeah.
I mean, all I did was empty bags, cut paper, wax paper.
Mm.
The big bowling alley machine that we have that took the 48-inch belt. You had to crawl inside of the belt and wax it and all sorts of stuff. So, and it was like everything I did. I remember I cut 12-inch drum paper for, and I was cutting it for the entire crew.
Wow.
And one time I cut it all, we had the metal, remember that metal,
yeah.
whatever they call it. Come on, help me out here.
The metal,
the metal template.
To cut the template. Paper. Yeah.
The metal template.
Yeah.
And you had to
the angle.
You had to do the angle right.
Yeah.
I think I cut like half a roll of paper wrong.
Oh shoot, man. Yeah.
Wrong angle, right?
Oh man, it's brutal.
I mean, there was no like, my
it's
nephew
okay.
Robbie,
Yeah. Yeah.
It was like people throwing stuff and like none of this is gonna work. And geez.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, that's rough.
And I'm like, how can you, and I know there's some people listening out there have no idea what we're talking about with cutting paper, but if you cut a bunch of paper the wrong way, it looks right, but there's nothing you can do except cut it back into edger paper.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's too short now when you cut it the right way to work.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times I banged my fingers or something pounding out edger disc because I wasn't doing it fast enough.
Yeah.
One of the other great jobs, like this kid that I was golfing with, he's a guy now, but he's like, man, you remember those water tanks? And it was like, because we sanded a lot of lacquer, we didn't use dust bags on the first cut. We had a steel water tank that you would take the top of you would put it on top of the drum. You know what I mean? The spout that would come off the plate.
Yeah. The cover plate?
No. Oh, what do they call that? Where the drum bag used to be attached.
Yeah.
You know how that used to come, the spout, right?
Yeah.
And how that used to come off.
Mm-hmm.
We would take that off and put on a tank, a metal container.
No kidding.
Like the size of like a microwave, and you put 2 gallons of water in that, and then all the dust would shoot into that.
Really?
Yeah. So now you got 6 guys out there running drums with these tanks.
Had no idea.
And all I would do for the first day or, of the job was fill these tanks and empty them. Now think of taking 2 gallons of water and filling it with dust and then trying to empty these things while guys are screaming, let's go. I need another tank. I need another.
Wow. No kidding.
Yeah, that's
I
it.
had no idea that was a thing in bowling alleys. What'd you do with all the balls?
We, we never touched them. That we didn't have to do that.
Hmm.
They were always, up and away.
I would think that they would get dust all over them. They don't put them out of the room altogether, or they just leave them there, or it doesn't. I mean,
They used to. Oh, okay. Now I see what you're saying. Yeah, people used to. The bowling alley themselves would do all the covering.
okay, okay,
Do the covering. Yeah.
yeah. Especially back then with the dust collection lack thereof.
Yeah, we had dust containment. It was just a big red bag.
Yeah. Hmm.
But those tanks, like I said, that was the thing that blew me away. Like for the first month was how absolutely heavy everything went. It was like everything I did.
Wow.
Like carrying water. It was like the pyramids. You know what I mean? You got to carry
Yeah.
around water buckets.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I had no idea that was a thing in the bowling alleys. Would you use water like that?
You had to, because it was funny how many times you would still get a fire in the water tank,
Really?
but it would be contained.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really like a fire flaming, but it would be
Mhm.
like just crazy smoke every once in a while, and the covered with water.
Okay. Wow. It's interesting.
Excuse my language. I'm sorry
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. That slipped out.
The bleach is covered with
Yeah.
water.
Yep. No, I just remembered we were installing 357 plank, which back then was unusual. You know what I mean? Back then it was mostly 2 1/4 or 5/16 back then for us. But my very first job was 3, 5, and 7 equal lineals, and we had to separate them out. And I remember him putting washer rows in and explaining that to me, and I didn't quite get that. Like, why would we do that? You know what I mean?
Why would wood move?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And I remember my legs being so sore the next day, just bending down all the time. And I didn't have knee pads for probably 4 or 5 months. I had or ear protection. I just worked on my knees. And I remember one day telling Stan or asking, I said, Stan, my knees are killing me. Like I didn't want to say anything because I didn't want to be, sissy, as you called me before. I didn't want to say anything, that make a big deal about it. But, man, my knees were killing me, man. So I said, man, is there any way can we get some knee pads or something? He goes, oh yeah, kid, go get some in the van and get some. I thought they were there the whole time. You know what I mean? And my ears are already shot from working in construction and running the jackhammer, so my ears are already ringing all the time. And but running the edger and everything, I never wore headphones. That was not even a thing. Never even. So later on, it wasn't until much later that I got headphones and we got a good pair of knee pads, and we're working with them. But at first, I was intimidated by the trade because it was and then I would see the floors that were done, and that guy, these are beautiful. But I'll never forget the first floor that we sanded and refinished, because it was a turd, man. It was finish was all wore off, and there was some stains here and there and whatever. And then at the end of the day, I remember we put medium brown stain on it, and we were staining the floor, and he's wiping on, I'm wiping off, and I'm like, this is stunning. I mean, this is beautiful. I still remember the smell of the stain. I remember how gorgeous that floor looked. And I was like, holy smokes, man. I was like blown away when we left. Then I was like, okay, this is cool. And then I remember we let the stain dry for about an hour. And then we slept in the van, and he listened to this 1940s music. And after an hour, he woke up. We went and got not lacquer, but the shellac bucket. And with a 6-inch brush, we coated the floor with shellac. And then we waited about another half hour. We put another coat of shellac. We hit it with number 2 steel wool, put a coat of polyurethane on it, got the check, and went home. And how wrong was that to put, you know what I mean? I mean, it looked stunning. But
yeah,
and
I would like to see what that looked like 2 years later.
Exactly. Yeah. But I was hooked. Um,
Well, the other thing that hit me was when I remember thinking, okay, I get to join the crew. I wonder what machine I'm gonna run.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, am I gonna do that one, or am I gonna do
yeah,
the sit down one?
mhm,
I wonder which one they're gonna give me. You know,
yeah,
and like all that crap I was just talking about. Lugging water and dust and cutting paper and everything. I mean, I literally did that. Just that's what I did
mm,
every single day. And I remember sometimes just looking like, oh man, someday
yeah,
that'll be me. I'm gonna
yeah. Be one of those
get
guys
to
running it.
run. I'm gonna be one of them. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. When I went was when I was working in construction, I said my father-in-law was a construction superintendent, and I was a huge company. And the owner of the company, his son came to the job one day, and he came down from the union and said, "Okay, he's going to be your new operator." So the operator back then would drive nothing but like big petty bones and big, massive, machinery, big stuff. And I remember we're standing there in the morning, and he goes, "Yeah, I'm your new operator." Um, and he says, "You are, huh?" The kid was like 20, 21 years old. He goes, "Yeah, I'm your new operator." So Tony picked up a shovel and threw it at him and said, "You're going to be operating this," and had him on a shovel for like 6 months before he let him get on a machine. So
yeah. That's
all
what it was.
you
People
don't
didn't
just
touch machines.
no. You got to earn your way up.
You did not touch a machine. The other thing too was how slow I was at everything.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know I'm not. Hey, uh, nobody's ever going to accuse me of being that real quick guy. Okay,
Yeah, we.
but to the point where somebody be like, "Yo, okay, you got to sweep all these approaches right here," and I, started sweeping, and the guy who was our kind of trainer type guy, wasn't related.
Mhm.
Told many sad stories about him, but he just like tore the broom out of my hand. And this is how you sweep. You're going the wrong way. You're going too slow. You'll be here all day, type stuff. And it was like everything I did. And then when I tried to speed things up, you just start fumbling and stumbling. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. So it was like all my worst nightmares did come true, you know.
Wow. It's crazy, man, when you look back, and like you said, when you look back to it, the way they did things back then versus now. Like I said, my uncle was as good as I thought he was, and don't get me wrong, he was good. I mean, he was a good floor man, and he did beautiful work. But that was my eyes as a young guy looking at that. You know what I mean? But putting two coats of poly on within an hour of the stain drying. I mean, we let the stain dry an hour. You know what I mean? Like that was crazy. And then putting the poly on it or the shellac on it. You know what I mean? That was crazy. If you're going to put polyurethane on top of it, but that's how we got paid. So
I think the other thing too, back when we started, I don't know if how your uncle was, but there was not a lot of explanation
oh no,
of why we're doing something.
no.
I mean, none. It was like just try to stay out of our way type of a
Hmm.
thing. Do this, do it this way, try to stay out of our way.
Well, for me, Stan would tell me, but he would tell me on the way home because at work he was busy. So at home is when I would ask the questions, and he would tell me, he would volunteer the information, but not unless I asked. Like if I didn't ask something, he wouldn't tell me anything. So I would ask whatever, and then he would tell me, explain things on the way home because I was generally interested in learning. But when I was in construction, zero, zero. I mean, you're less than zero.
Yeah.
You could not be any lower on a totem pole. You don't ask nothing. Um, Nobody cares. You're an apprentice. Just do it. Get in the corner. No,
Don't
yeah,
ask
yeah,
why.
yeah.
Just I think that's one of the big I think that's one of the big differences now too. When new guys are starting out. I mean, we always talk about the power drive, but can you imagine your first day on the job,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you and I both think back to our first day on the job. Can you imagine if it was running a power drive?
Yeah.
What your frame of mind would have been
Oh
if
yeah.
that was your first job was running a power drive. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Right away.
Yeah.
Right away. Remember I was saying, oh man, I'm dreaming of being a part of this crew.
Yeah.
But right now, all I'm doing is lugging water and emptying bags. When can I be one of those guys?
Well, right away you'd feel like you're doing something. You're sanding a floor. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
Yes.
I'm in the game, man. I'm sanding a
I'm
floor right now.
I'm a craftsman. Look at me. Look
Yeah.
at what I'm doing.
Yeah. Um, that and also you could never talk to a guy like we were spoken to back then. Today, it just would not happen. You would never. It would never be the case at all. You'd lose a guy on the first day. On day one, you lose a guy.
How old were you when you started working with Stan?
Probably 19. Yeah, 19.
Oh, you were a man.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
You were a
Yeah.
man. See, I was
Mhm.
still a child.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was still a child.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. All right.
That's why I was petrified.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. But it seemed like it'd be easier because it was your family.
No, it was harder.
Wow. Well, you really don't
It,
know because you didn't work
it,
with
it
any.
was harder because you're a Johnson type of a
Yeah.
thing.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lot to live up
So
to.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I get you.
Or some of the other guy out here, spoiled brat kid, and I'm like, spoiled brat kid, really?
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I envisioned you. Like if I closed my eyes and thought about Rob on a floor job when you're a kid, I see like you riding on top of the drum sander when your dad's pushing the drum sander. You're riding on it like eating a bag of Cheetos, like throwing it at the other guys. And then when your
You've
dad,
said this before.
I
I
know,
can't believe you've
I
used this
still
in the show before.
I still think that
Yeah, I'm just getting a
yeah.
ride. Oh my gosh.
And your dad leaves to
That
go get
is,
some
yeah,
sandpaper,
my
and
dad pat me on the head. Yeah.
yeah, and your
In
dad
your
leaves.
mind, I was probably wearing that little beanie with a propeller on it and
Hmm,
spinning.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. There you
And
go.
and your dad leaving the job site to pick up sandpaper, and when he comes back, you're ratting out the guys who were like smoking cigarettes while he was gone and everything. Good, Robbie. What'd this one do? Hey, he was eating. He's eating, Dad, Papa.
That was the other thing. Every single guy on that crew smoked,
Yeah,
like nonstop.
yeah, yep.
Not while they're out on the lanes, while they're and unless once they started pulling lacquer, okay.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
every one of them was a smoker,
Hmm.
all day, every day. Crazy.
Different time, man. Okay, let's stop right here for a minute, Rob. Where the are we going with this show?
We're just
Is there?
talking about our first day. I got the power drive in there. I
Yeah.
thought you were gonna add in a couple of things that Bona made easier.
Oh, we've done that. I think we've done that.
Well, do it again. What the are we gonna? This is 6 years of doing this. Just do it. Jesus. Oh, you've done 1,900 episodes, and you want to try to figure out something new? Talk
Okay,
about talk
I'm
about how
sorry.
easy flow is to put down compared to the first glue you used. Jesus, I give you the lead in with the power drive, how it's nice and easy, and you're just like, oh well,
Look, I'm just trying not to
yeah.
repeat stuff. I'm trying not to repeat stuff. Is all.
Listen,
I yeah.
we're repeating stuff, okay?
Okay. All
It's
right.
we're wearing flow hats.
Well, those are nice. These are nice hats.
Yeah, so talk about it.
You talk about it. I'm comfortable. I'm doing my thing here. I just want to see
Yeah,
what. Okay.
nothing.
I asked you this. I asked you earlier today. I said, "What do you want to do a show on?" I'm gonna read your text message. You said, "Let's do a show." You said, "Okay, topics. How about selling Green Guard Gold system?" And then the other topic was holidays are coming up, cleaning recoats. And then the third one was crazy weather swings on fall between night and days. Be careful and monitor. And then remember your first job. I said, I don't know, Rob. Seems like we just did one on the Green Guard Gold. And the holiday deep cleaning, I don't know, man. It feels like we just did that one too. And then I cannot even repeat what you yelled at me. Yeah, I mean, you screamed at me, called me every name that I haven't been called since I was attempting to play football.
Did you ever watch a sitcom?
Yeah.
You ever watch a sitcom?
We all have, yeah.
Yeah. And then around the holidays, like Thanksgiving, they would do like a Thanksgiving show.
Yeah.
Every year.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Every year. It wasn't a repeat. How many more new things do you think we can come up with?
Yeah, you're just going into more detail about it.
Thank you.
Was it God?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Pick it up with something that you think is easier now than it was when you had started. Okay. And please try to make sure that whatever makes your life easier now has something to do with Bona. Okay?
Okay.
Try that. There you go.
All right.
Attaboy.
I'm going to start.
Take a deep breath. Exhale. I'm gonna.
I was thinking when I look back, how hard things were compared to now when it comes to flooring. Because some of the stuff that you talked about, everybody smoking cigarettes, right?
Yeah.
We went there because you didn't deserve to live back then, right? Everything was toxic. Everything. You slept in lead paint beds. You had all kinds of lead and toxic things and the finishes and everything, the VOCs. But now with the zero VOC finishes and stuff like that, how easy they were. Look at my wrists. I got carpal tunnel syndrome in both wrists. You can't tell by looking at them. I don't even know why I pointed them up. But that's all from yeah. You got it too?
No.
Yeah, of course. What are you going to punch me? But things are much easier now than compared to back then. That's one thing when I look at back then. Like I said, not only that, like the education for months, not even wearing knee pads. I mean, who would even think that would be a thing nowadays? You would never get a guy out in a job without knee pads, without ear protection. You know what I mean? Those type of things. So there you go. That's all the time I'm going to give you, Rob.
We're good.
Okay. Good?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Hey, this has been another episode of On the Floor with Wayne and Rob. Please stay tuned for another episode.